Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ, down there in Atlanta, Georgia. Co-host of Chuck and Chernoff over there on The Fan, 680 The Fan. Go check them out, 680thefan.com. Go check out the mobile app, all that good stuff, so that people like me here in Knoxville can still listen remotely, even if I'm hours away from all day Atlanta traffic. It's Matt Chernoff. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Chase, I'm excellent. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I got to tell you, once you leave the Atlanta life, have you ever actually left Atlanta, like moving wise, long term, or are you a lifelong Atlanta resident?
I'm one of the 4 people born and raised who have stayed. So no, I
okay.
mean, yeah, nothing more than just visiting other places. But yes,
I'm telling you, Matt, if you do it, you get out. You're like, man, the traffic. It's hard to come back to when I come back with the fam and everything. You're like, wow. I forgot about this. I'm not built for that anymore.
That's why I shouldn't leave, though. I don't want to ruin the surprise of there's actually better situation somewhere else. I don't want that life.
No, absolutely not. Whomst among us would want that? Well, Matt, we have some Atlanta stuff that I wanted to pick your brain on. It's funny, like I hesitate to go down the Atlanta Falcons road with you because as a longtime listener and former intern of the show, one of the things that I've noticed over the last few months, Matt, you're tired. The Atlanta Falcons have made you tired. You're tired. You are tired, Matt Chernoff, of talking about the Atlanta Falcons and where things are headed. Is that a fair assessment?
So, okay, let me tweak it. I'm not tired. They wear me out. Like,
yeah.
The beauty of the NFL, and you know this like I do, is, man, there's never a shortage. Like I said today on our show, the Falcons actually got interesting again when they stopped playing games. Right? This offseason has been Belichick chase, Kirk Cousins chase, Justin Fields stuff, trading up in the draft. Will they be interesting when they get on the field again next fall? I have no idea. So have they worn me out? Yeah, they've worn me out. But thankfully, God, the NFL product is so interesting that it gives you something to chew on in a way that the other sports just cannot match.
No. And I mean, there's just so much coverage. It's weird. Like you said, like they're obviously not big primetime team and haven't been that way and been pretty boring the last few years by and large post Matt Ryan. But yet they're just the biggest talk is because so many different things and so many different avenues the Atlanta Falcons can take just have ripple effects all around the league. So you can't avoid the Falcons nationally right now because they can do so many different things that impact so many different teams, right?
Right. Well, as I'll lead you on here, have I been super negative on them? Sure, they've earned that, right? They like I joked that anything they want, sometimes or more than not, ends up in the 11th hour getting snaked away from them. They have a franchise history of they wanted Bill Parcells, and he ended up going to the Dolphins in the 11th hour. I truly believe Arthur Blank wanted Bill Belichick more than he wanted his own children, and it took Rich McKay and Terry Fontenot and dozens of others in the organization to talk him out of it so he didn't get Bill when he wanted him. They wanted Deshaun Watson in the worst possible way. And then the Browns came in and snaked him with a guaranteed deal. So my feeling is the Kirk Cousins thing, they'll get snaked in the 11th hour because they want it. And frankly, they don't get anything they want.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that about the Kirk Cousins thing. And I love that we're now in like home buying watch, which is a great thing. I feel like it's a college football story right now. We're in, the recruiting base and his wife's pulling him close to home. Is he buying a house? Where is he buying a house? And I imagine you have Brian Finneran just being like, hey, can you keep us up to date on what's going on over there in Sugarloaf or like in Swanee? I mean, you can go to Buck Blue. It's like, are they over there in that area? Is 680 just because you have so many different guys all across Metro Atlanta? Are y'all all on neighborhood watch?
So it's funny because I don't think that story's real. I think Kirk Cousins' team used Florio as his pawn to get the Vikings to try in the 11th hour to come to the table with one more offer. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think Julie Cousins was down here scouting out houses. She's from here. They know the neighborhoods. It's not like she doesn't know her way from 85 to 985. I don't believe they were scouting schools. Again, their kids are 4 and 5.
Yeah.
I just think that this was the ultimate 11th hour ploy and Kirk has been, to his credit, one of the great negotiators the league has ever seen. He
Hmm.
works the system beautifully. He plays the media beautifully. And Minnesota fans and Minnesota media, I mean, like, to hear them talk about it, you think they're losing like one of the great success stories in Vikings history. It's been 6 uneven years for Kirk Cousins in Minnesota with 2 playoff seasons. Yet Kirk tugging on their heartstrings, and these media reports coming out that he might leave for Atlanta, they've lost their mind in Minnesota. So I think this whole thing about schools and houses, I think Florio was used beautifully as a pawn by Cousins and his team to see if he couldn't one more time squeeze Minnesota one more year or some more guaranteed money. I don't think he wants to leave. I think if the Falcons offer him more, he will leave. And I'll give you one little twist on it, Chase. I don't know that the Vikings want him back all that bad. I think publicly they're saying the right stuff. I don't know that they want him back as bad as some want them to believe inside, the building or in Minnesota in general.
Well, that leads me to this, Matt. Like, you're the GM of the Atlanta Falcons right now. What do you actually want Atlanta to do? Like, now that you've seen all the different scenarios, and let's stay in the realm of like what's reasonable. Like, obviously, like I would keep calling about this guy Patrick Mahomes. I would call him. I would see what the Chiefs are. Hey, are you happy? Obviously, in a perfect world, you could just acquire a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes. But in what's realistic, and you're the GM of the Atlanta Falcons, what do you want, and what would you do this offseason?
So considering that there is nothing close to, not even, let's forget the word perfect. There's nothing close to a like really good well-rounded option. Because I like Kirk Cousins, the quarterback. I'm living in fear of what that contract's going to look like for a team that bragged on how they got out of salary cap hell by eating all the dead money from Matt Ryan and all the other contracts. That, Chase, there's a chance they give Kirk Cousins 3 guaranteed years. I don't know if they'll end up going that far, but there's a chance they give him 3 guaranteed years at $120 million, right? So now you're going to pay a quarterback $40 million. Now, they can open up money by doing contract restructures. They can cut some other guys, but that's exactly what they wanted to get away from when they said we were moving on from Matt Ryan. Now, they've twisted that tail. They didn't want to move on from Matt Ryan. They, tried to have sex publicly with Deshaun Watson. Matt didn't like, them cheating on him publicly, so he's like, I want out. And then they used the story that we wanted to get out for Matt's contract. I want Kirk Cousins. I don't want the contract. So that being said, I wouldn't do Kirk for that kind of money. I would have a hard line and move on. If this number gets past a certain point, I would walk away. Justin Fields does not overly excite me. At least it's only a 2 years commitment. You have the year under contract and the 5th year option. And we're at a point now where I think you can get him for a 3rd round pick. I'm not the biggest. I was a much bigger fan of Justin coming out of Ohio State than I am now. So I think he's largely flawed. I don't like Russell Wilson, but I love the price. Like, if he really wants to do the deal where he sticks it to the Broncos and you pay him $1.2 million, I can live with the weirdness of Russell, the fact that I think his skills have diminished because I can surround him with a bunch of stuff. I'm not trying to avoid the question. There is not a great option among this group. But knowing the Falcons, somehow the musical chairs game will stop and they'll end up with Gardner Minshew or Jacoby Brissett. If it's me, I would move heaven and earth to try to move up in the draft. But the problem becomes you got to have a dance partner. And I don't know if any of those top 3 are going to want to dance. Like, I would much rather see them fill the quarterback slot with something cheap for a year, bring in a quarterback, whether that's Jaden Daniels or whomever you think you want to try to do. I don't think Drake is in play, and I don't think Caleb's in play. So if it's Jaden, I would let him sit for a little bit, give me some version of a veteran quarterback, and try to build around the young, cheap quarterback moving forward. I just don't think that's realistic because I just don't know if they're going to have the capital to get up as high as, let's say, the Patriots at number 3. So they're stuck in purgatory, man. It's an awful spot to be in quarterback desperation.
But on the positive side, I think there's a way to spin this, and I wonder if this makes you happy if they ultimately go down this road, Matt. Like, what if they still sign, like, they get Kirk for 3 years, whatever. Maybe it's 2. Maybe it's just a bunch of money and it's 2, and that's like the middle ground they're able to get to. A lot of guaranteed money and all that, but it's 2. But they also trade up for a quarterback. Is that enough for you to be like, okay, it's foolproof. They've really, really invested. Like, Kirk is a stopgap for 2 years. That's fine. And then he's going to get the most out of all these different wide receiver skill position guys, whether it's Pitts, London, Bijan, whoever. Like, we're going to have good, competent football. Once again, the offense should be fun. And then we also trade up for whether maybe it's JJ, maybe it's Jaden Daniels, whoever it is that something? I think that's more plausible than I think a lot of people may overlook. Do you share that sentiment that they could do the best of both worlds, which is, look, I know you don't love the options that are available out there, but we're going to sign Kirk Cousins. We're also going to prepare for life after Kirk Cousins and really just solidify this quarterback room for the long term.
So let's play that out, because if you're signing Kirk, you're doing it in win now mode, and it's pretty obvious the owner at 82 years old wants to give himself and his team the best chance to win.
Mhm.
If you do the scenario you're talking about, and I just paid a boatload for Kirk, but now I'm giving away a chance to get cheap labor, talented players around him for the next 2 or 3 years, that doesn't gel. And that's why I don't think it's like, I could see them drafting later on project quarterback that they can try to develop. But so if you traded away the picks to move up to number 3 to take a quarterback, well, now I can't get Kirk another stud receiver. I can't get Kirk something on the defensive side to help if he doesn't have the ability to score as many points. I don't think those two things mesh. I don't think you can spend the money and the draft capital on 2 quarterbacks when, and there's part of this that has to be said. It has been grossly exaggerated, all the stuff the Falcons have offensively. They have Drake London, who's a pretty good receiver. He's not a 1, but he's a pretty good receiver. Kyle Pitts at this point has been nothing more than a maybe, and a guy who's been banged up, has not been in the best offense, has not had a quarterback. So that's what you have, and you have Bijan, which I think everybody loves. And I think Bijan would be the one that would benefit the most from Kirk, because now you'd have to take the pass game seriously, and he'd catch a million passes. But beyond that, Chase, they have no receivers under contract. I don't mean, like, I'm not exaggerating. They have no receivers under contract outside of Drake London. They don't have a defense that I think is as good. Okay, I'll put it this way. The defense did a good job last year. They overachieved based on the talent of the opponents they played, and they did a real, like, Jesse Bates was awesome.
Yeah.
David Onyemata was a great pickup, and so was Caden Ellis. At the end of the year, that defense was falling apart, and the more they played more skilled and talented people, you saw them come back to the pack. So the weirdness of the Kirk Cousins thing to me is he's joining a very flawed roster.
Yeah.
That I know he'll make better, but Kirk isn't great enough to take a middle-of-the-road team and make them something more than just a little bit better. The best news for him and the best news for the Falcons remains the NFC South. And that's not anything about them. It's the division. So if they go Cousins, I think they go spend big in free agency. I think they use a lot of their draft capital to surround Kirk with stuff. I think they try to maximize the 2 or 3 years with Kirk rather than spending capital on another quarterback.
This is more of your wheelhouse based on what the Falcons have done to you these past few years, Matt. What's the worst case scenario for the quarterback position this offseason for the Falcons?
Oh, I told you, they get left at the altar, right? They want Kirk, he's plan A, doesn't happen. They want Baker, he's plan B, he goes back to Tampa. They get down to plan C, they want to trade up in the draft, and they don't see that playing out. Now they're on to plan D, and it's Justin Fields, and they're like, we don't want to give up more than a third, and somebody else comes in and gets Justin. And there is a world, Jason, it's not out of the realm of possibility, where Gardner Minshew is your starting quarterback week 1 next season.
Do you really think that's the case?
I think everything's in play. I see the problem for the Falcons when you pick at 8 in the draft.
Yeah.
You don't control anything. They control an offer they can make. They don't control whether the New England Patriots would accept it, right? In free agency, they control an offer they can make to Kirk. They don't control him accepting it. Same thing with Baker and the trade for, like, they're at sort of the at the wrong end of waiting to see if the other side is agreed upon. They have 7 or 8 different plans I'm sure they are considering, but they don't know if any of them will work. And they're not alone. Other teams are like this as well. I would compare it to Chicago knows they're getting Caleb Williams. Washington pretty much knows they have the choice of Drake May or Jaden Daniels, right? Like, outside of that, every other one of these teams who is quarterback desperate is in the hands of somebody else. So, yeah, there's a world where Jacoby Brissett or Gardner Minshew starts for the Falcons this season. It's the last potential option, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Final thing on this. What if they just sign Russell Wilson to like you said, just the contract being what it is, him being released, like, it's super, super small money, super small investment. They sign Russ, they take JJ at 8, and then they trade back in for some defensive help, whether that's a corner edge guy in the first round. Is that an A+ offseason for you, or an A+ situation?
I don't know if it's an A+. I think it's
Are you
the best
happy as a fan?
Here's my problem. I go in with a lot of skepticism of anything they do because they're an organization that's been filled with chaos for a very long time, and it starts at the top. So, before a lot of the other Atlanta media were on this, and it wasn't a popular stance, I kept banging the drum that the owner's not been a good owner for a very long time. And I don't know if that's because the owner got distracted with soccer and other endeavors. And I don't know. But the owner has not done a good job in a long time. And there are many different avenues to that, whether it's being too loyal to his head coach at one point, staying with his GM for a long time, embarrassing himself with the Deshaun Watson stuff, holding on to Rich McKay in this weird codependent relationship. So when you say, am I happy as a fan? No, I'm not, because I know my organization is one that has to overcome chaos. So my hope is that Raheem Morris is good enough to overcome chaos. I'm hoping the staff they've put together and whoever they draft can overcome the chaos. But make no mistake, this is an organization that has been filled with chaos for years, and that's not easy to overcome unless you get special people. Special can overcome chaos. I don't know if they're going to get special. So it's more of a let me see them prove it to me before I buy into anything they're going to try to sell me.
On the positive side here, the Braves, we're a couple weeks away from the Braves being back here. But I'm curious from your perspective, because I feel like there's just been so many breakout players for the last couple of years as this team has just turned into a juggernaut in the NL East. Matt, who do you think is the next Braves breakout player? Who do you have circled as like the next guy that is going to be a linchpin of this core going forward?
So there's a couple of answers to that. And it's funny, we went from Falcons chaos to one of the more buttoned up organizations in sports, right? You know the line of structure, you know who's in charge, you know how it all works. So I've already predicted Austin Riley, I think, wins the MVP this year. Now he's already broken out, so that's not.
Yeah, he's not a breakout. Yeah, we can't do that.
So I think he goes from really good to great, I guess is my point. But there's only everybody else is sort of broken. Feeling that he can reach, but Ronald Acuna is, he might those numbers again. He's as great as he can be, right? Sean Murphy's a really good catcher. Ozzy's a tremendous second baseman. Matt Olson hit 54. So if I'm doing the everyday players, Michael's the only one who has a real big ceiling that he can reach. Spencer Strider won 20 a year ago, and I don't think he's figured out really how to pitch. I think the next step for him is like adding more weapons to his arsenal, which is frightening. I'm not trying to cop out. I don't know where you go with that because the core is so good and so defined that I would think the only place to go is Harris, because I think he's got 30 home run potential and 35 stolen base potential. And he's already shown you that he can hit 300 and have an OPS in the 820s and he's the only one. Everybody else is established as a star or borderline superstar.
I wonder if it's a pitcher. Maybe it's AJ Smith-Shawver. Maybe it's one of the arms. Maybe Waldrop right out of the gate here. I mean, I just wonder if that's the next big star. Is like, because Spencer Strider, it's just now he's just an ace and maybe the best pitcher in the NL. Like that happened very quickly and way ahead of schedule. I wonder if that's the next kind of linchpin guy.
Those are good candidates, but it would take some circumstances. In other words, you'd have to have an injury or two. Right, which is not out of the realm. I mean, you have a 40-year-old Charlie Morton and a perennial banged-up Chris Sale. So Smith-Shawver and Waldrop are going to get their starts. But pitching is such a tricky thing to project that. Like, what we've seen out of Spencer Strider is so atypical. Like, you don't usually come in and pop the way you do. Typically, it's Kyle Wright struggling for a year and a half, if not more than that. It's people screaming that you need to send him back. Kyle trying to figure his stuff out, and then, okay, maybe it pops in year 3 or 4, whatever it is. So you're right. Maybe it's Waldrop or maybe it's Smith-Shawver, but I've learned enough around this young pitching to never try to think you have it figured out, because that's the trickiest game of them all.
Absolutely. You didn't mention left field, though, and I'm very curious here. Like, I've seen a lot of Braves fans just pencil him in, and we'll see if that's the case. But are you sure Jared Kelenic, excuse me. I'm never going to get this right.
Kelenic, just go Kelenic. You're good.
Kelenic is an everyday left fielder. And also the two-part to this, does it matter if he doesn't end up being an everydayer?
So the first part is I don't know. The second part is he could hit 210 with 9 home runs. It doesn't matter. The embarrassment of riches that this goes one of two ways. Jared Kelenic is the most below average left fielder in baseball, and the Braves win 103 games. Jared Kelenic is the biggest surprise in all of baseball, has an unbelievable Orlando Arcia kind of year nobody saw coming, and the Braves win 106 games. You know what I mean? It's like, if Kelenic, to me, and I have no clue if Kelnic's going to hit enough, but he's going to get every chance, right? Defensively, they'll tell you they can live with his defense. Maybe if he struggles against left-handed pitching, they'll work out something where a righty gets some opportunity. But here's what I would need at Kelenic. I need Kelenic to have 2 or 3 moments in October. Like, I'd appreciate if he had a really good season offensively. And the good news for him is all the things that they're saying, they do make sense. He's got no pressure on him. He went from being one of the young faces with the Mariners, a top 10 prospect in all of baseball, their number 1, to you won't even know he's here when he's hitting 9th in the lineup. People wouldn't be able to pick him out of a lineup, and I don't mean a baseball lineup. So it's honestly, it is largely pointless and useless, whatever he does, good, bad, or indifferent, which should tell him I can just go out and play. Then we get to October. Can I get like a moment in the NLDS? Can he have some kind of moment in the CS? And if they're good enough to get the World Series where he has a moment. Outside of that, everything else is gravy.
I like it. Final thing here. It's a chaos question for you, Matt. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot. Have we seen Trae Young already play his last game as an Atlanta Hawk?
No.
Okay.
And here's, so Trae did the interview with Taylor Rooks from TNT where he said all the right stuff. He's like, I don't want to go anywhere. Doesn't mean the Hawks won't trade him. Here's the Hawks have a lot of Falcons to them. There's a lot of chaos. Ownership is wonky. The GM just is hesitant to make any move. I've never seen a GM, Landry Fields in his first time, like he does not want to pull any trigger. I would tell you this. I think they will entertain all kinds of offers. I don't think the owner's willing to trade his cash cow. Like, the team becomes completely irrelevant the day Trae leaves. So you have a franchise that's not good anyway, but at least they're on the radar and on the map. There's a reason that attendance is what it is. And the local carrier for the Hawks came out with their numbers. They're up like 30% in the ratings for a below 500 team. And it's because of Trae. There's nothing else on this team that's interesting. So, no, I don't think he's played his last game. If they're smart, they realize we've got something figured out. We've got a star player. We've got to figure out better ways to build around him. Like, if I'm Trae, I would ask out. And I've said this before. I'm going into my 6th year. The organization peaked 3 years ago. The ownership let pieces and parts of the team get away for nothing because they kept devaluing them. Like, this week, they're playing Garrison Matthews off the bench. They're playing Bruno Fernando. They're playing Trent Forrest, as a backup point guard. This is because they chose to give away Kevin Huerter to stand to the luxury tax, to devalue Collins over and over, so they traded him for nothing, to not have the depth that they once had during that 21 run to the Eastern Finals, and to essentially, and part of this is on Travis Schlenk too, right? Travis didn't get it all right. They traded up for DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre's never been more than just a guy. They were hoping Onyeka Okongwu would develop into this young star starting center, and that's never happened. So there are a lot of factors that have led us here. But if I'm Trae, I would absolutely say I got to go somewhere I can compete. But if he doesn't ask out, I would never trade him if I was them.
So it doesn't even matter the deal. You would keep this thing going no matter what.
Well, you'd never get a return package for a star player that's any good. Like, they'll get 3 first-round picks, and they'll get Keldon Johnson, and they'll get, like, you'll never get anything in return that you're going to like. You'll get marginal players, expiring contracts, and a gaggle of draft picks.
They're just kind of screwed, right? Like, I've been saying this, like, unfortunately, I don't know if you're still doing it every game. And like, we have the ATL Sports Guys group chat that we're talking. And I mean, it's cool that Jalen Johnson's popped the way he has. And I think he's a long-term core guy, but like, when you let Herter go for nothing, you let John Collins ultimately go for nothing. Jalen Johnson is a nice find, but AJ Griffin, not a rotation guy. You bet wrong on Onyeka Okongwu becoming a long-term answer at the 5. Yep. You didn't trade Capella this summer when, again, he had really high value. So now that market's tanked. Yep. I just feel like they're kind of stuck. So to your point, of like, there's something they can do.
So to me, though, the league is always, it's a simplistic thing. Although with Trae being your best player, it's tricky, right? Small, 6'1" point guard. You got to build really well around him. It's not easy, and this group has not been able to do it. I think Schlenk was on the right track. Schlenk's plan was overload it with shooting, hopefully get enough defense, and we'll see what happens. And in 21, They were just loaded with depth, right? Like we used to laugh that they would play Tony Snell, who would come in and hit his 1 3-pointer a night, right? And Solomon Hill would play some minutes off the bench, but it was Lou Will and it was Gallinari and it was Bogdanovich, and like they just had a bunch of depth. But then the business got into it, and you have an owner who. And then I'm going to try to figure it out from there. That's the goal. Can you ever get another star player with Trae Young? They embarrass themselves. Did to the Spurs. So that was, to me, the straw that broke the camel's back with Schlenk, because I don't ownership and everybody else pushed for it. So no, to me, the one thing you have figured out is your 27 and 10, 26-year-old point guard. Try to figure out ways to build around him. That's your goal.
I love it. Matt, what can the good folks check out from you all across 680 The Fan and everywhere else this week?
You can listen to the afternoon extravaganza that is Chuck and Chernoff on the Fan 2 to 6. You can also download the Daily 10 podcast on any of your favorite podcast platforms. That's my 10-minute digital sports page every morning at 10 a.m. for people to enjoy. And I don't know, maybe I'll end up working the window at Arby's or something, pick up some extra money. I can
there you go.
serve you your fries and your roast beef sandwich. There's always more time in the day, Chase, if you want to pick up some extra gigs.
Are you an Arby's guy? What's your go-to?
I don't have Chick-fil-A is always going to be the ace. Arby's is greatly underrated. I will tell you right now. If I could get the Arby's mozzie sticks or their deep fried mac cheese bites, very good. I would leave. I think Arby's gets a bad rap, all pun intended. So I would rank them Chick-fil-A. I would, after that, see if I'm going away from Chick-fil-A, then I'm going to burger. So I'd probably go a Wendy's burger, then I might go a Burger King. But Arby's is always in the rotation.
Hey, Arby's, and they have coupons out the wazoo. Like Arby's is clutch. You can eat cheap at Arby's and eat quality.
Listen, cheap and quality are two good things I like. I describe myself cheap and quality.
Go listen to Chuck and Chernoff. Go subscribe to the Daily 10 on every podcast platform. Matt, thank you so much for the time. As always, have a good rest of your week, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Chase, thank you, buddy.